Well, hello everyone and welcome back. I'm so glad that you have joined me. I want to give you one more installment on intimacy. And just by way of review, we started off with a quote by Francis Frangipane where essentially he said, what God longs for is everything that we do out of intimacy with Him. Frangipane says that God actually dries up our unanointed momentum, the unanointed momentum of our own zeal. And He doesn't do that out of meanness. God does that out of love because He wants what we do to be done in intimacy. He wants ministry to flow out of intimacy. And so we talked about that. We talked about what Henry Nouwen talked about, the rhythms of Jesus. Nouwen said that there were three rhythms: intimacy, and then community, and then ministry. And then we looked at Mary and Martha from Luke chapter 10, 39, 40, 41. And we talked about how Mary was positioned at the feet of Jesus. And that doesn't mean we just live at Jesus' feet and don't do anything. No, it's a posture. It's a posture of our heart where we learn to live being sourced by the words of Jesus. And that's where Mary was. And Martha is, you remember in Luke 10 verse 40, was distracted. And the word distracted means to be drawn in circles. And I made a comment, I think in our last podcast that I want to clarify. There was, I said it's a conjunction. It's actually an adverb, and the adverb is also. So in the Greek, it actually reads this way. Verse 39, Luke 10, verse 39, it says, Martha had a sister who also was seated at the Lord's feet, listening to the word. So Martha had a sister named Mary who also, that's the adverb, was seated at the Lord's feet and listening to the word. Now that could mean that Martha had a sister called Mary, and she also sat at Jesus' feet, listening to the word. Could mean that. But several expositors made this comment. They said it could be rendered this way. Martha had a sister called Mary, and Mary was seated at the feet also, like Martha once did. And the point being is what several expositors says is that they implied that Martha was at the feet of Jesus sometime in a relationship with Him. We don't see it in the scriptures. There's not a place in the scriptures where we see that. But their point was sometime in their relationship, Martha was at the feet also, listening to Jesus' word. However, in Luke chapter 10, 39, 40, 41, 42, she's not. She's distracted. What's the point? The point is that something drew her attention away from that place of intimacy. And that's the challenge. That we're not drawn away from a place of intimacy. We got to live from a place of intimacy with Jesus. We got to live from that place of intimacy. We got to live from that place where we're being sourced by the word, moment by moment by moment by moment. Remember we said life is in the voice. And Mary was demonstrating what life is, being sourced by every word coming out of Jesus' mouth. I mean, he speaks John 6:63 to life. And there's Mary listening to everything Jesus is saying. But Martha, she's missing it because she's spinning circles in the kitchen, distracted with much preparations. And we said that's the word for ministry. So ministry was distracting her from the minister. And she was, Jesus says, bothered and worried about many things. Troubled, worried, bothered, words that just mean her mind was in a state of confusion, right? So what several scholars imply is that Mary was at the feet of Jesus, and maybe Martha at one time in their relationship used to sit at Jesus' feet and listen to His words. But on this occasion in Luke 10, she was drawn away. She started spinning circles in the kitchen. And it's interesting because remember, Jesus says to Martha, 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 and brings correction to her. But then He says, Mary has chosen the good part. She chose. And so Mary chose the good part that won't be taken away from her. And Martha did not choose correctly. And that's our challenge, man, is We got to choose to stay in a place of intimacy, gang. We got to choose to stay in a place where we're being sourced by the word, moment by moment by moment by moment. So very important. Well, what I want to do is I want to look at what I feel to be like a parallel passage to Martha's distraction. And this is a story from Mark chapter 4, and it's the parable of the sower. And you're familiar with the story. It's just a phenomenal story where Jesus talks about sowing the word, and it falls on 4 different like hearts, receptivity, all right? And so here's Jesus explaining the parable. He says this in verse 13, he says, or verse 14 rather, the sower sows the word. Now that's what Jesus was doing in Luke 10, verse 39. Mary was at the feet and Jesus was sowing the word. He was sowing the word. And you got to think about how powerful and profound that is. The word is transformational. There's nothing more powerful than the word of God. Nothing more powerful, guys. Nothing more profoundly powerful. Like heaven and earth passes away, what Mark 13:31, but not the word. 1 Peter 1, 23 and 25, it's the imperishable seed, man. It's the enduring word. It was brought into existence through God breathing it. In 2 Timothy 3:16, flowers and field fade and pass away, Isaiah 40 verse 8, but not the word. Wow, it's powerful, it's profound, man. It's transformational. It's effectual. Isaiah 55:11, like it will not return void. It's powerful, guys. It's powerful. That's the power of the word. And so Mary was in a place where the word was being sown into her. And now we have a story in Mark 4 where the sower is sowing the word, this transformational, powerful word. And it falls on 4 different types of hearts. And in the first heart, and I won't dwell on the first couple here for very long, but verse 15 is the hard heart. And this is the one where Satan comes, he takes the seed away, and it really amounts to nothing. And it's the hard heart. The seed, the word doesn't penetrate into the person's heart. And so the enemy comes and he takes. And that's the nature of the enemy, to steal, to take, and plunder. He steals, kills, and destroys. That's his nature. And so that's verse 15. The hard heart takes the seed. And then in verse 16 is the next individual. And this is the person who hears the word, and when they hear it, immediately they receive it with joy. They're like, oh, this is so good. Wow. And it takes off, man. The word actually begins to bring fruition. But then it says here in verse 17, when affliction and persecution arises because of the word. So it's like the word itself invites affliction and persecution, a testing, see? It says here the person immediately falls away. And that word fall away means to be offended. It can be trapped. It's like they get offended, they get upset. And so people whose hearts are, we'll say, shallow, where the word does not take root, they fall away quickly. They hear the word, they're like, oh, this is so good. And they're on fire for a while, but the word doesn't penetrate and take root. And so when challenges and persecutions come, they tend to get offended and fall away. And that's the second individual there. The third individual, and this is the one here that I want to underscore. Verse 18, I'll just read it here. It says, and others are the ones on whom seed was sown among the thorns. And these are the ones who they heard the word. And Luke, I think it's Luke 8, verse 14 says they go on their way, meaning they start walking out the word that they heard. But it says here, the worries of the world, the deceitfulness of riches, the desires for other things enter in, and it chokes the word. It chokes the word. Now, I remember reading this one time, and it's like I didn't see this. It's always been there. It's like, look, I didn't see that in the word. I always joke, something was just written in the word I didn't see, but that's not true. It's like, I never saw that before. And it's always been there. Anyway, it's like, And I was reading this, and it says, look at this. It says, the third individual are the ones on whom seed was sown among the thorns. Among the thorns. And I have missed that. Like for years, I never really never really grabbed me. Never really got my attention. But think about this for a moment. The seeds were sown on the heart, on this individual. They heard the word, they heard it, but there were thorns in the soil. Now, what's that mean? That means that this person had to be exposing their heart to a foreign seed. They had to be yielding the garden of their heart to other seed besides the word of the Lord. And you got to think about that for a moment, guys. That's a preoccupied person. I believe what Jesus is referring to here is a person like Martha in Luke 10, verse 40. She was distracted. Her mind had thorns in it. Jesus says you are worried and troubled about many things. And I think Martha had thorns. I think Martha had thorns that was choking out the word that Jesus was releasing that day. And here's an individual. They hear the word. They hear it. And again, Luke, I believe it's 8:14 says they go on their way. Let me check that real quick. Luke 8:14. Is it Luke 8:14? Oh, yes, it is. It says they hear the word, they go on their way. Once they hear it, they go on their way. And so they're actually walking out the word. And Luke 8:14 says this, they don't bring fruit to maturity. And several expositors said that the fruit that they produce, it's like malnourished, it's shriveled up. It's like we had a peach tree one time and all these peaches, blossoms came out and I thought, oh, we're going to have peaches. But when the peaches came, they were all shriveled, just like, ugh, you couldn't eat them. And I believe this is what Jesus is saying here. A distracted heart may produce fruit, but the fruit's going to be shriveled. See, that's what distraction does to a person, man. Their mind is riddled with thorns. And so when they produce fruit, well, it's not very good fruit. It's not very good fruit at all. So that's what distraction does, guys. And again, I'm not chastising us here. I'm just saying we got to get into the place of intimacy. We got to find that place in our lives where we live out of the voice. We live out of the voice. In this story in Mark chapter 4, Jesus, a few verses later, says this. He says, I close my Bible up. I want you to hear this real quick. Here's the good heart. Listen to this. Let me go back to this in Mark 4. I closed my Bible. I wanted you to hear this. Mark 4, listen to this. Here's the good heart. The good heart hears the word, keeps hearing the word. It's actually present tense. They keep hearing the word. They accept it. They yield to what the word means in their life. All right? And then they bear fruit 30, 60, and 100-fold. I don't think that's three people. Like this person bears 30, this person is 60, this person is 100. I think that's the maturation of the word in a person's life. When a person is in a place of intimacy and they hear the word and their heart is hearing the word, they're hearing the word, they're staying in a posture of intimacy, hearing the word, and they're accepting what the word means in their life. They're yielding their life to the consequences of the word. And as they mature in that, I believe they bear fruit 30 and then 60 and then 100-fold. It's the maturation of a believer, all right? A good heart, an intimate heart, a person who's intimate with Jesus. So here's what Jesus says in verse 24. He says, take care how you listen. Like steward your ears. And that would be my challenge in regard to distraction, guys. We have to steward what we listen to. We have to steward the garden of our heart. I gardened for like 22 years, man, and it was a beautiful garden. I mean, there were no weeds in it. I just constantly weeded it and stuff like that. But here's the deal. Our hearts, they're a garden. And what we listen to It's like sowing of seed, what we listen to. And you can't afford to allow things to be sown into the heart, into your heart, that's going to spring up into thorns and create distraction and choke out the word that Jesus wants to implant in you, man. You listen, you got to guard what you listen to. And humble opinion, be careful of social media, news. CNN and Fox News probably is not going to sow the kinds of things into you that you need to hear. Man, let the word of God be sown into you. Expose your ears to his word. Expose your ears to what he is saying. Stay in a place of intimacy. Stay in a place of union with him. Let everything that comes out of your life, as Franja Payne said, be union with him, intimacy with him. Ministry out of intimacy, guys. Wow. In this day and age, guard yourself against distractions. Live in intimacy with Jesus. Minister in intimacy with him. So anyway, hey, thanks a lot for joining me on these podcasts on intimacy. Be sure to like and share. Sure appreciate that. And go to my website. There's resources there that can help you in growing in your relationship with Jesus, growing in intimacy. But thanks, everyone.